Have you ever felt like a fraud, like you were embarrassed about what it is you don't know at work? I have, particularly when it came to Linux. There was a point where I just felt like people would find out I had no idea what it was I was doing, and I kind of felt that way, like I had no idea how to do anything in Linux at all. But over the years, and having more experienced coworkers showing what it was they did and teach me different tools they use to get things done more efficiently, I've gotten over that fear. A few weeks ago, I came into the office nice and early on a Monday, got in hoping to get some work done, and I was greeted with this. Production issue, apparently, from some customer. I thought there's no chance. Everything was fine on Friday when I left. Sure enough, no, it wasn't okay. I told them I'd get right on it. After all, I was the only one in. I'm not going to wait 2 hours for someone else who's on call to come in and take care of it. So the first thing you do, you always want to look at the logs, and that's what I wanted to do. But I knew from experience, opening up a log, a large log especially, in something like Vim or an editor is not a good idea. First of all, it has to read the entire file into memory. That can take a while. Usually feels kind of clunky too. So less is usually what I'll use to look at a large log file. Now, I don't know about you guys, but we output a lot of color into our logs sometimes. And if you're not familiar with what this ESC32 nonsense is, that's basically an ANSI escape sequence. And for the longest time, I just tried to ignore them as best I could. Now, I learned only a few weeks ago I didn't have to be doing that. -R will honor all raw control characters, including color escape sequences like that. That was a lot easier to read. Looking at this file, I noticed two things. One, it took basically 10 seconds to respond to our customer. And two, reference error is not a very useful error. So I still had no clue what actually happened. Next thing I did, want to go to my application directory, restart the app with some additional logging. Now, I'm all about being as efficient as possible, typing in as few characters as I can. And so what I'll often use is cd-. Instead of typing out an entire directory name, just cd- will take me back to the last place I was. I use this all the time to toggle back and forth between directories. Very useful. Side note, you can do the same thing in Git. Git checkout will quickly switch between branches that you're working on. If you're not in an IDE and you're constantly in the Linux console, this will save you a lot of time. At least it does for me. So back in my log file, I want to try and capture this particular stack trace. I've used less to open it up again. But less by default doesn't actually load new writes to the same file. But it can. If you just type in Shift-F, it'll begin actually watching the log, kind of like tail does. So I hit the application. There's my stack trace. Somebody misspelled callback, and it's happening in the auth library. Great. Now, most people will say, well, why don't you just use tail? And you can use tail. I mean, tail works. It's great. The other nice thing about tail, though, is I can actually tail multiple files at once. Think an Apache log where you're writing to an access log and an error log, and you want to watch both of them at once. Tail is great for doing this also. Now, usually at this point, I reproduce the error locally. I'd fix it locally, make tests pass, and then deploy it. But I was feeling awesome on this day, and I just fixed it in production. So I had a feeling that I was going to want to come back to my log directory. And again, I'm all about being as efficient as possible. So instead of cding to my app directory, I use something called pushd. And this will allow me later on to get back there really quickly, and I'll show you how later. Looking at the file and fixing it, I realize, yes, I've fixed the typo, but there's a bigger issue, which is this 10-second response time. Looking at the file, I realized why we'd never seen this before, even though we never actually changed that file as far as I could remember. It was happening in a timeout response handler. And basically, it looked like we weren't able to actually get to our authentication service. I fixed it, restarted it, just to verify that it actually worked. And it did. I got rid of the old error just to get a new error. We still couldn't get to our auth service. I wanted to check and see, all right, can I even reach it at all from this app, from the machine at all? So I wanted to use curl to do that. I went to our certificate directory so I could curl to our auth service with our app cert. Hit enter, and sure enough, it just hung. I got no response back whatsoever. I expected at least some sort of error message, but I got nothing. So how long was this going on? I wanted to be able to find out. So the first thing I did, I want to go back to my log file. popd. That pushd command I issued earlier is paired with a popd command. Basically, popd allows me to go back to the directory I was just in right before I issued the pushd command. So I'm looking at my file using less, my log file, and I want to see the first time that this reference error occurred. Well, less offers a really convenient way to actually search through a file. Typing slash and typing what I want to search for and hitting enter will highlight all occurrences of my search. I then used n, lowercase n, uppercase n, to search through the log file, finding the first place this actually occurred. And that's thought had been happening since the beginning of the day. That's not good. That means it's been happening longer than just this day, which was Monday. I needed to make sure this wasn't, I needed to see how long it had been actually happening. I wasn't going to go through each log file and checking this. I needed some other way to do that. So grep was a great tool for searching for text across multiple files. Now, by default, grep will output every single line where it finds a match, and that's not quite what I needed. I wanted just the names of the files where this error was occurring. So grep-l is what I used. The -l flag is great because it actually outputs just the file names, the unique file names of every match that it finds. I then pipe that to sort. Now, what sort does, by default, it'll sort everything alphabetically ascending, meaning that basically the file with the oldest date timestamp on it should appear first. After running this, I got nothing back. But I quickly realized I've got a typo in here. I misspelled error. Now, again, I'm being as efficient as possible. If I can avoid hitting left a bunch of times and backspace a bunch of times and fixing things, I'll use something like this. Now, if that looks a bit odd to you, let me just break it down real quick. There are basically two parts to this. The two exclamation points, that's a reference to the previous command I just ran. In this case, the grep-l with my typo in it. The GS with a bunch of R's after it. GS stands for global substitution. And what this is doing is it's basically taking my last command and substituting everywhere there are 3 R's just for 2 R's. Hitting enter runs it. Thus, I see my output here. It looks like it's been happening since last Friday. All right, so basically at some point on Friday, this thing stopped working. I have no idea why. How many times has it happened over the weekend? Well, again, I can use grep to do that too. If I take my regular grep output showing every single line where this happens, and I pipe that to the word count command with the -l flag, basically that'll count all lines and then give me an output. Happened 243 times. One quick side note. I don't know how many of you actually are working in the terminal or the command line all the time. If you're not using an IDE to use git and grep, git grep is a great alternative to just using regular grep. For starters, it's a little bit faster, takes advantage of the git cache. It also automatically ignores your git ignore file. So all files in your git ignore are automatically ignored. No need having to wait for those to be scanned at all. So I was still at a loss for what actually happened. I was trying to remember back. We did deploy some code last Friday, but we didn't change the auth file. And after we deployed, everything checked out just fine. And then I remember the infrastructure team was going to come on and do some security scans and change some settings. And I thought there's no way they would have changed anything, right? Those guys never do anything like that. I wanted to check the IP firewall, see if they maybe changed something in there. I couldn't quite remember what the command was for that. And I could have Googled it, but Linux offers a really quick way to go and check through your command history. Control R. What this will do is it'll begin a reverse search through your command history as you type. So start typing in IP. That's not the command I want. I know it's not sudo IP adder show. So to continue it, searching back through your history, hit Control R again. That's what it is. I want to look at the IP tables. That's what I wanted. I hit enter, and this is what I see. Basically, it's saying I've got 243 packets that have been affected by this particular filter rule, which is basically filtering all output destined to anywhere on port 443 or over HTTPS. That's a silly rule to have, so I just dropped it. Basically, what this now does is it's going to drop all output over the TCP protocol. That's what -p is for. Over port 443, that's being dropped. I did that. Everything was fine. Back up and running. Now, I didn't learn all these things overnight. I learned them over many years watching my colleagues work, and I've got sticky notes and notes all over my desk for fun commands that I want to learn and use over and over again. Learning some of these basic commands has helped me get over that fear of not looking like I know what I'm doing. And hopefully, memorizing even just a couple of these will help you get over that fear too.